As we approach the fall and the one-year mark to the 2024 election, new reporting from NBC News is highlighting the efforts of both parties to court what is now the fastest growing demographic in the United States, Asian Americans, with the DNC saying it's already spent six figures on ads targeting the demographic, and the RNC opening community centers in California and around the nation designed to turn out the vote. Joining us now with more on the story, NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor. Sahil, what more can you tell us about these efforts?
Hey, Mika. Well, not only are they America's fastest growing demographic, Asian Americans are also the fastest growing share of the electorate, which had the biggest turnout jump of any racial or ethnic group and surprised many political analysts in the last election by providing crucial votes for President Biden in swing states. Let's look at some numbers here. In 2020, 72% of Asian Americans voted for Biden, 28% voted for former President Trump. Turnout spiked from 49% to 59%. In battleground states that decided the election, they were up by more than 300,000 votes in an election where Biden's margin of victory came down to about 45,000 votes in 3 states. Think about that for a moment. Without Asian Americans, Donald Trump would probably still be president today. Now, both parties have taken note. The DNC has spent six figures on ads, one on AAPI month in May that was translated to 7 different languages. Democrats have relied on welcoming attitudes, pro-immigration positions, appeals for the working class to achieve the American dream. Here's what Congressman Ro Khanna, a Biden surrogate, told me, quote, "The Asian American vote will likely be decisive in battleground states like Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, which are decided by such a small margin." He said Democrats must speak to the aspirations of the community and focus on education and pathways to good-paying jobs. Now, Republicans are losing Asian Americans, but they know they can't ignore this group either, and they're trying to cut in to the Democrats' advantage with what the RNC tells me is a multi-million-dollar investment to boost their ground game and open up 40 community centers across the country, like the one in California's Orange County, where they've had some success in courting AAPI voters. Here's what House Republican campaign chair Rich Hudson told me, quote, "That is a community that ought to be voting Republican. I just think our party has not done a good job of communicating with them," unquote. Overall, Asian Americans prefer Democrats by about 2 to 1. The largest sub-ethnicities are Chinese, Koreans, Filipinos, and Vietnamese Americans. They have a big footprint in key swing states like Georgia and Nevada. This is the demographic we're going to be hearing about and reporting on for a long time to come. Mika?
So Sahil, we've heard through the years of demographic groups, certain demographic groups being inclined to vote a certain way, and many people of color inclined more traditionally to vote Democratic than Republican. There are, of course, significant exceptions to that. George W. Bush did extremely well in 2004 with Hispanic Americans. I am curious, though, if you look at the trend line through the years, Asian Americans have always been more likely to vote for Republicans in the past, right? Is there a trend away from Republicans over the past 8 years?
There certainly has been, Joe. There was some data in the 90s that Asian Americans did prefer Republicans, but the numbers were too small for them to significantly influence elections. Your 2004 analogy is instructive. You know, Latinos in 2004, that was kind of the big year where everyone realized, wow, this is a massively important demographic, probably helped George W. Bush win re-election. A lot of people might look back on 2020 and look at that as the 2004 equivalent for Asian Americans, where they became this powerful group that neither party could ignore, that, you know, one party might win them comfortably, as Democrats are right now with Asian Americans, but Republicans need to cut into that advantage, and the margins there could be everything going forward. Republicans have tried to use social issues, cultural issues, things like affirmative action, liberal attitudes, which they call wokeness, to drive a wedge between some of the more culturally conservative Asian American groups. They've had some success courting Vietnamese Americans in places like Orange County that I was talking about. Filipino Americans are also known to be more culturally conservative than, let's say, the Democratic Party right now. But the messages on immigration, on the working class, achieving the American dream, there's a gut feeling that Asian Americans have right now that Democrats are more aligned with them. Joe?
What about the rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans and the statements that the president made and other Republicans made the president going around calling it the China flu. I think at one point calling it the Kong flu, saying other things that Asian American leaders that we've had on this show, and also just being outwardly bigoted toward his own secretary, Elaine Chao. What are you seeing in the polling or hearing from Asian American leaders about how those racist stereotypes might be hurting Donald Trump and the Republicans?
Yeah, the rise of Trump was undoubtedly a factor, according to some of the experts and some of the Democratic AAPI leaders, in particular, that I spoke to for this. One of them described it as kind of jet fuel for the turnout of this community. It was a primal feeling that, they were under threat, that they were being attacked by the president. At least some voters felt this way, and it ended up, propelling turnout in a major way. In places like Georgia in 2020, we talked about how that had an impact on the presidential election. But then in 2022, the turnout held. 2020 was not a fluke. AAPI turnout was pretty strong in 2022 as well. And one person who took note, for instance, was Raphael Warnock. He cut ads toward the end of that competitive race against Herschel Walker in multiple different languages, including Mandarin, including Korean in Georgia, trying to turn out these voters. There's a lot of talk about the Georgia suburbs as well, Joe. A lot of those suburbs, a lot of voters in those suburbs are AAPI voters. So the presence is kind of broad-based, and one of the unique things about AAPI voters, overall a small share of the electorate, but uniquely powerful in swing states. And back to your earlier question, yes, Trump was certainly a factor. It looks like he's going to be on the ballot again. There's not a lot that he's done, or the RNC has done, his party in general have done, to try to win back those voters that he alienated with that kind of inflammatory rhetoric.
Well, I will say, and it's so fascinating that you bring that up. That just sort of reminds me, Mika, I was born and raised for the first 5-6 years of my life in Doraville, Georgia, which was suburbs of Atlanta. It was like a scene out of the Wonder Years. When I went back in the 90s, there were so many signs as you drove through the Doraville area and the Chamblee area, but mainly the Doraville area. You saw a lot of Asian Americans, a lot of Asian American businesses. Yep. So Sahil's point that Georgia is a really critical place in the battle for this extraordinarily important demographic really rings true to me, at least.
And amazing as we're watching the legal part of this play out in Georgia as well. NBC's Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much for your reporting.